On today's show, the Orlando Magic are one of the hottest teams in the NBA, having won 7 straight games and tied for second place in the Eastern Conference. How are they doing it? They've gone from 18th in the NBA defensively last season to top 3 this year. Are the Orlando Magic ahead of schedule? We're going to break it all down coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players and their stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. They've got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes PrizePicks the #1 DFS app on the market. And with basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can do LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus reception. So if you've been thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, you've got to check out PrizePicks or go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Magic, Philip Rossman-Reich, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Magic. And Philip, the Orlando Magic, 7 straight wins and tied for second place in the Eastern Conference with some really impressive wins against the Denver Nuggets, the Boston Celtics. So kind of walk us through, how has this Magic team been able to come out on top against some really high quality opponents over this 7-game win streak?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is they're just a young team and they've gotten better and they've kind of figured themselves out and figured out their identity. The simpler answer is, like, this is one of the best defensive teams in the league. I mean, we're 17 games into the season. The Magic, I think, are now 3rd in the league in defensive rating after the game against Charlotte on Sunday, which was not their best defensive effort, which they still won. But this is a team that has really figured out who it is and figured out its formula to win. And the things that they are good at, they're just elite at. They're elite at forcing turnovers and getting out on the break. They're elite at crashing the offensive glass to kind of negate some of their shooting struggles. They've got a budding star in Paolo Banchero, who has really blossomed this over the last month, really, as a scorer and is developed as a passer too. They've got one of the best benches in the league with Mo Wagner and Cole Anthony, both capable of going off for huge games. Mo Wagner had 27 against the Celtics on Friday. Cole Anthony had 30 off the bench against the Hornets on Sunday. Like, this is a team that is a team. They play really, really well together. They understand each other. And right now they just understand what they're very good at, and they do it very, very well consistently.
This Magic team jumping up, becoming a top 3 defense in the NBA, right there with the Houston Rockets. We might be a little bit ahead of schedule, these two teams. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But how did they go from 18th last year to top 3 this season? Is it just internal growth from some of these guys? Is it different guys being put in better positions? What is it that's allowed them to become a top 3 defense?
Yeah, it's definitely internal growth. And look, they were 18th in the league in defensive rating last year, but they started the year 5-20. So if you chop off those first 25 games, which we always do here in Orlando, at least with last season, if you from December 7th to the end of the season, the last 57 games of the season, they were 6th in the league in defensive rating. So they had some confidence built up from last season, from the end of last season, that, hey, we can be a very good defensive team. But I don't think anyone saw, and as good as that defense was, they were not this good. They were not this disruptive. It's, Jalen Suggs being the head of the snake. And frankly, people aren't talking enough about him as a potential defensive player of the year candidate, or even an all defensive team player. He is someone that is now guarding the best perimeter player on the other team, whether that's Jason Tatum, whether that's LaMelo Ball, and, can rip the ball away from them. Just is a constant physical pest. And this Magic team they use all that length that they've been drafting for so many years to get deflections, to just be present, to switch, to do whatever they need to do to make it hard for you to score. The main focus for Jamal Mosley has always been defend the rim, defend the paint. And this Magic team's done a very good job of doing that. And unlike last year, they're getting out to the three-point line much more consistently to limit attempts there and limit opportunities, and that's enabled this defense to really flourish.
For the uninitiated, one of the reasons the first 25 games gets thrown out last year is because of the just insane number of injuries that the Magic dealt with, specifically to their guards. They had no guards.
No guards.
Now, I know Markelle Fultz currently out due to injury this year, but it's having Jalen Suggs there, having Cole Anthony, his impact off the bench. You mentioned Jalen Suggs and his defensive presence, but then also Cole Anthony. At what point do the six-man of the year drums start banging, louder and louder as the season goes along? Because having that kind of 1-2 punch, a little maybe offense defense substitution at times is really beneficial for this Magic team.
Yeah, and right now they're able to play together, because with Markelle Fultz out, Anthony Black is starting as a rookie, but he really only plays that first 6 minutes to give the team a defensive presence, and then it's figuring out who's going to play that last guard spot the rest of the game. If Gary Harris is hot from three, it's going to be Gary Harris. If it's Cole Anthony, it's going to be Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony absolutely should be in the sixth man of the year conversation. Both he and Mo Wagner should both be in that sixth man of the year conversation. They're both playing exceptionally well off the bench. And obviously award stuff comes with winning. Like no one's paying, Cole Anthony was scoring a ton last year off the bench too, but no one's paying attention to a 34-win Magic team that, started off the year so slowly and kind of quietly snuck their way into the postseason conversation. This is a team that's winning now. And so the attention is going to come, being on this podcast. I know you like to get around to everybody, but being on this podcast, talking about a winning team, having a 7-game win streak, being honestly like first place in the in-season tournament group with a chance to advance to the quarterfinals, be a surprise team that gets to that final 8 in the league. The attention is going to come to this team as they keep building that consistency. But what I've been most impressed with this team is their maturity and their poise. They're enjoying this obviously, but they all keep saying, we got to be about the work. We still got to work. We still got to get better. This isn't a moment to celebrate. There are still goals out there to achieve. And for a team that's never really been to the playoffs, they've only got 4 players who've ever been to the playoffs on this roster. That's actually, I think, a really mature way to approach their success early this season.
We've joked about this, off camera before about a Rockets Magic, rematch in the finals as these two young budding teams kind of, find their place in today's NBA landscape. But does it feel, Philip, that this Magic team is maybe a little ahead of schedule, further along than where you thought they would be at this point this season right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping that they would just be in the play-in conversation, that they would be a team. I thought that they would struggle with kind of youth and they get stronger as the season goes on. Even looking at the early schedule, I thought this early schedule was going to be really, really tough for them. A lot of road games. They're on a 6-game homestand right now, and they're fully taking advantage of it. But they, had a 4-game West Coast trip, second game of the season. They came back home, played 2 games at home, shipped out to Mexico City for a game, came back home for a game, and then went out on another big 4-game road trip. Those are really difficult things for a young team to handle that's still trying to come together. And instead of it being a challenge for them, it really seems to have kind of galvanized them and helped them figure some things out. They had their struggles on the road. They've lost, they were 5-5, only a few weeks ago. But this is a team that has figured out a lot about itself or knew a lot about itself beforehand. And so I think that when you're looking at the bigger picture, we're almost a quarter of the way through the season. And, do I expect Orlando to be the 2nd seed in the East? Probably not. There's a tough stretch coming up in December. This team's going to have its ups and downs, as every team does during the season. And this team's doesn't have experience to lean back on to tell them how to get through it. But do I think that this team can do better than just making the play-in? Absolutely. I think this Magic team should expect to make the playoffs at minimum. At worst be in the 7-8 game of that play-in tournament. But, you change expectations as things go along with an elite defensive unit like this. the Magic should feel that they can accomplish a whole lot more than they thought they could.
And one of the, to be doing all this despite kind of a shocking regression in efficiency from Franz Wagner is kind of interesting to me, because that's one of the things, areas of his game. And not only can he score the ball, but he can score the ball efficiently. And that's not common for a lot of young players. You might get guys who score well on volume, that kind of thing, but the efficiency is usually something that levels out, gets better with time. He's regressed from 59% true shooting to just 52% this year. Is it anything specific that you're seeing with his game? Is it just his shots not falling, or what is it, going on with Franz right now?
Yeah, his 3-point shots aren't falling for sure. Like his angle, his shot angle looks a little flatter if we want to get into the nitty gritty of it, but shots aren't falling for him right now. He's just coming, tonight, I don't know what the numbers are after Sunday's game. He just scored 30 points, made his first 9 shots, was 11 for 15 from the field. Like this Sunday's game felt like a normal Franz game. But look, I think there's 2 things going on. First, he did play in the FIBA World Cup. He was a heavy usage guy in that FIBA World Cup. There might be a little bit of fatigue playing a factor in there, but like so many other things, I still think it's important to remember, and even the Magic have tried to remind everyone of this, this is still a developing and growing team. They still have young players who are trying to figure this thing out in the league. We were concerned in the first 2 weeks of the season because Paolo Banchero was struggling to score. He entered the league scoring 20 points in his first 5 games. He couldn't clear 20 points in his first 5 games. And you watched him play and it's like, okay, he's trying to be more passive. He's trying to pass the ball a little bit more. He's trying to find the right balance of when do I go get mine? When do I make sure I keep my teammates involved? He was trying to be a good teammate. Franz almost has the opposite problem where his shot volume has gone up and his efficiency hasn't followed because he's trying to create more for himself. He's trying to be a little bit more aggressive. He's trying to get to the foul line a lot more, which is a big reason why his scoring average hasn't really changed much despite the efficiency drop. So I think like so many other things with young teams, it's just a young player trying to find the right balance of, okay, I'm trying to add some skills to my game and be something that my team needs me to be, while also still being what I was before that my team needs me to be too. And so I think Franz is trying to be a lot more aggressive and trying to find the right balance for when to push his own shot and when to just be part of the team like he's been for the last few years.
Can the Magic maintain one of the NBA's top defenses? Where will they ultimately land? Are they play-in bound or potentially even further than that this season? You'll have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Magic. Philip, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.